Why, hello there. This is Dr. Juice, and I'm going to be going over the inferior function today, as promised in a previous video. Last time I talked about the dominant function, your most used function, and how it takes up the largest portion of your conscious thoughts. The inferior function is the opposite of your dominant function. It takes up the largest portion of your unconscious thoughts. So for instance, if you're an INFJ with introverted intuition as your dominant function, extroverted sensing is going to be your inferior function. So the inferior function being the opposite of your dominant function makes it kind of a weakness. I mean, just think about it. You're using your dominant function a lot of the time. You try to become very proficient in it. The inferior function is the opposite of that. A lot of times it can run in conflict with your dominant function. It's probably not going to be something that you've practiced all that much. And for this reason, it's often a weakness. So let's give an example with INTPs. Introverted thinking, detached logic, objective, searching for the truth, pushing away emotions that get in the way of judgments. The opposite of that, reaching out for emotional connection with people, striving for harmony by sometimes bending the truth, going for emotional impact rather than accuracy. That's extroverted feeling, and those qualities the INTP is not going to be naturally good at. Another example is an INFJ, introverted intuition, going inward to look for meaning, abstractions, vision. The opposite of introverted intuition is extroverted sensing. That's living in the moment, impulse, okay, surface. In some ways a little bit shallow compared to introverted intuition. These are things that the INFJ is not naturally good at. And so developing your inferior function in a way is facing your greatest weaknesses and trying to become good at them. Look at the people around you. Compare them to yourself. We all have different strengths and weaknesses, and that's partially because we have different dominant and inferior functions. Another important aspect of the inferior function is something called inferior eruptions. It's something that's gone into great detail in Naomi Quenk's book. Did I pronounce that correctly? I don't know. But Naomi Quenk's book, Was That Really Me? She goes into great detail about the inferior functions and for each type. So, what's an inferior eruption? Okay, think about your life. Think about a period of time in your life where you're consistently stressed out during that period. During this time, you might have been on edge, not acting yourself, in a way that people who know you well might be surprised to see you acting that way. Let's take an example of an ISTP. Let's say he's very stressed out from work, he's had a terrible day, he's been put in uncomfortable situations. He's driving in the car with his wife, okay? He stops at a red light, and the light turns green, but he doesn't go because he's thinking about something else. And a guy behind him honks, okay, to go. Being as stressed out as he is, he just can't control it any longer. He gets out of the car, walks over to the guy, and just punches him in the face, okay, and walks back. Okay, what happened here? Here, the normally rationally acting ISTP, who doesn't let his emotions get to him, went up and just his emotions exploded. That is an example of an inferior eruption. Let's take an example of an ISTJ with a dominant function of introverted sensing and an inferior function of extroverted intuition. He's very stressed out for whatever reason. Let's say he has to plan for a wedding. The ISTJ, who's normally very consistent, has every detail ironed out, is suddenly becoming paranoid and imagining all these possibilities how things could go wrong, and trying to follow up on all these really obscure possibilities. Possibilities, huh? Extroverted intuition. That's an inferior eruption with extroverted intuition. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what an inferior eruption is about, right? Leave me a comment if you have any questions about that. Let's talk about the transformative nature of inferior functions, okay? I'll use an example of an INTP again, since I'm an INTP myself. The INTP could develop his extroverted feeling to reach out and become more emotionally connected with people, to enjoy the emotions that come his way rather than dissecting them and losing the magic of them. That's an example of developing your inferior function. Let's take a dominant extroverted feeler, an ESFJ, usually reaching out and creating great harmony with people, upholding good moral values in the community. They could develop their introverted thinking to stay logical and make sure that their values are consistent, make sure that their values are really good values and accurate and logically sound. That's another example of somebody developing their inferior function and becoming a better person because of it. Now let's talk about inferior function as a relaxation tool. Let's take an example of an INTJ, INFJ. Extroverted sensing is usually correlated with getting out and enjoying the physical moment. The INFJ or the INTJ may seek out places for their sensory experiences, like a really great restaurant, or maybe even something a little bit more extreme like skydiving or surfing or something. That's an example of relaxation for the INTJ and INFJ with the inferior function. Usually relaxation with the inferior function kind of comes naturally. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel for more MBTI videos. I'll see you guys next time.